Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill Wednesday afternoon. And look, we have not gotten up here and talked about negative news that much with USC on the recruiting trail. Wednesday afternoon was one of these days, right? Five-star linebacker Xavier Griffin decommitting from USC. Now, Dill, look, on the surface, five-star linebacker from the state of Georgia decommitting from USC, that might not be all that surprising, right? We talked about it when Xavier Griffin committed to USC. We said, hey, this kid's going to be hard to hold on to until signing day because Kirby Smart and Kalen DeBoer and Hugh Freeze and Mike Norvell, they weren't going to give up on this kid. The more intriguing conversation with Xavier Griffin is the reason why he decommitted. And it sounds like the reason he decommitted is, hey, Chad Bowden has come into this USC program, and it sounds like there is a no visit policy in place for committed prospects for USC. Now, this is a policy that not a lot of other programs, I think, have the kahunas to kind of set. Really, the only program that does it is Clemson. Now, what's worth noting here, where's Clemson supposed to finish in the 2025 college football season? One of the best teams in all of college football. So maybe Dabo Swinney's onto something. I want to talk about, one, how we feel about the policy, because me and you disagree on it a little bit. Talk about what it means for USC going forward. And then we got to talk about, put my general manager hat on and say, hey, what does it look like for the linebacker class in 2026? Little spoiler alert. I think USC is going to be just fine at the off-ball linebacker position. Before we get into it, as always, the USC fans, man, I'm fired up to hear what the USC fans feel about this in the comment section. We've both been on the message boards and we've been on Twitter a little bit. A lot of different takes to be had. And look, all the USC, I need the USC fans who are listening to a recruiting update in the middle of May. I know y'all got some takes. Please let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I want to start with the policy. The policy that Chad Bowden has come in and said, hey, if you're committed to USC, we don't want you taking any other visits. And if you are going to take those visits, maybe back off your commitment. And not maybe, back off your commitment. What's your feel? What's your take on this policy from Chad Bowden and USC? And can I specify something real quick? This is Chad Bowden. I think there's no way around that. There's this conversation about how much Lincoln Riley and Chad Bowden, who has to say, this wasn't a thing with Lincoln Riley the first couple of years of him at USC. This is a new policy that is coming with Chad Bowden. Dill, I'll give you the T-box here, takes on the no-visit policy for this USC program.
I think in an ideal world, you love it. Because I think really what you like about what Chad Bowden's done coming to USC is he's taken the attitude that USC isn't going to be taking a back seat in any facet anymore. Recruiting, NIL, player development, like all those things that felt like maybe at times weren't ideal for Lincoln Riley and weren't necessarily going in the right direction. He's put that in a 180. And Lincoln Riley used to say that USC was the gold standard. Chad Bowden started to operate like USC is truly like the big dog on the block. And when they come hunting for your recruits, they're going to be really aggressive and they're going to strike fear in teams. So I think I like where Chad Bowden's going. I look in maybe this interim period. Is there some wiggle room in a situation like Xavier Griffin? Because he did commit pre-Chad Bowden, and that wasn't necessarily a thing. That wasn't something when he committed. Yeah. I'm sure Lincoln Riley didn't sit him down and say, look, you're not going to show up on Texas campus. You're not going to show up on Florida State's campus or Georgia or Ohio State or wherever you think you're going to go. I do wonder, like, again, just retroactively, is there some room? Because I agree in the direction Chad Bowden's going, but I don't think you want to lose a really good player over something that, I don't know, feels like.
Here's what I'll say about this, though. Here's what you said, is there any wiggle room? From what I've seen from Chad Bowden and from what I've heard from Chad Bowden and what we're talking about Wednesday night here, ain't no wiggle room. Like if there was wiggle room, it probably would have been for a guy like Xavier Griffin. Chad Bowden's not a guy that I think does that kind of wiggle room. And look, if you are going to implement this policy, it's got to be for everybody in your class. Like, you can't hold your 3-star recruit the no visit policy and then let your 5-star recruit do that. That is not
So
how
I
you.
guess I'll put you in a situation. Like, I feel like Oklahoma's tried to do this to an extent. In last year, Michael Fasusi commits to Oklahoma right before the season
Yep.
starts. I mean, he took some visits now in the middle of the year. I think he went to Texas. I know he went to that Texas A&M Texas game in Texas A&M. I mean, Oklahoma's in a much better situation because they were able to keep him in the class at the end of the day. I do wonder, like, situationally, is it something like, again, in a perfect world, you wouldn't love your commits taking visits, but it's just kind of the way of the world. It's kind of always been the way of the world, and no other teams are really trying to do it. So I do wonder, like, is this something that is easily implemented and sustained in a way that, again, because Clemson, you've seen some moments where, like, last year, it did kind of cost them in that recruiting
Okay,
cycle.
so can we? How about this? How about this? Number one, with the Oklahoma take, what Oklahoma and Brent Venables were doing over the last couple of years, not exactly the
That's
gold
fair.
standard in terms of putting your roster together. Number two, look at Clemson with Dabo Swinney, but also look at Notre Dame under Chad Bowden's tutelage and management. Both of those programs, they got one thing in common. They develop players that are really good, high level, and they don't lose players to the transfer portal. There's not a lot of other programs across the country that can say that. Does the Dabo Swinney no visit policy, hey, when you're committed to Clemson, we're not playing any more games. Like, when you're committed, you're committed. Now, I think it was Brandon Lockhart, 4-star cornerback committed to USC, on Twitter, was like, my parents are committed to each other, and my parents are not allowed to go on and test their other options on dates. Yeah, a really simple way and solid way of putting it. When you want to build your roster to be sustainable for years and years and years, you want your guys who are committing to USC to be committed to USC, especially in this era of college football where you have the portal and you have NIL. As many guys as you can get committed to USC that are as close as to all in as you can get, that's what you're looking for. Go back to USC under the last couple of years with Lincoln Riley. They didn't seem like that program for guys like, Deuce Robinson or a guy like Zachariah Branch didn't seem like they were all in on the program. I think one of the policies here, I think maybe not the policy here, but the thought process here is we want to make sure we fill our roster with guys that are all in about this program, because that's really hard to do in this era of college football. And maybe that's
but that's still where you got to walk the line. Like, you still got to get really talented, like a lot of really talented players into your building. And again, USC at the moment is not
having a problem with
any
that.
issue with that, clearly. But I wonder, like, again, I just think of situations like a David Sanders, a Michael Fasusi. Like, there have been a lot of recruitments where teams have had to fight down the stretch to keep recruitments, and there have been some visits. I get, in an ideal world, you don't love the idea that David Sanders was going to Ohio State like a week before signing day. But again, I look, Tennessee's still in a much better position because they were able to hold on to that recruitment. And if they did take such a rigid, hard line, well, if you visit, you're gone. I mean, they'd be in trouble.
Look, man,
that's the balance you got to strike. I just wonder, if
I'm a USC. Sorry,
can you truly do the no visit policy and put enough talent into your room to be really competitive year in and year out?
So I think, do we not have our answer?
Well, maybe. I mean, this has been 6 months or so, and again, a really, really good 6 months. But I guess, why don't other teams implement it? Like, Georgia doesn't implement
maybe
it.
because that's a very good point. It's like, why don't many other programs outside of Clemson really have this policy? Is a phenomenal question. I will say this, from what we've seen from USC over the last 4 months, they are not going to have any problem with this policy in landing high caliber kids, because that's what they've done over the last couple of weeks and months. Dill, here's what fires me up if I'm a USC fan here. Yeah, I mean, I forgot the number. I think it's 27 now. Yeah, 27 commitments in the middle of May with the no visit. So you're telling me that the kid's committed to USC right now, and you might see a couple guys maybe decommit and want to take some visits, but you're telling me you got 27 kids in the boat right now that are committed to USC and their recruitment shut down. They're locked in. I'm a USC fan. I feel freaking awesome about that situation. Can I stress one other thing that I saw some USC and I really appreciate the USC fans having this take where it's like, look, Pete Carroll encouraged, and I was a little young for the Pete Carroll, so I'm kind of taking y'all's word for this. Pete Carroll encouraged kids to take their official visits. I don't think Lincoln Riley and Chad Bowden are not encouraging these kids to go through the process. I don't think they are. I think it's, hey, when you commit to USC, we're committing to you as well. So go through your process and commit to us when you're ready. We're not kind of pressuring you in to shut down your process. But when you're ready to commit, we need you committed because we're going to be committed to you as well. And we're going to stop recruiting other players. The Julian Lewis situation is probably the best example here, where Julian Lewis commits to USC very early on, reclassifies all of that, and USC stops recruiting quarterbacks. Julian Lewis was clearly not committed to USC, taking visits to Colorado, to I believe it was Georgia, and I believe it was to Auburn. Indiana was thrown in there too. USC got lucky because they had a 5-star quarterback sitting in their backyard in Hassan Longstreet that they were quickly able to pivot to and go out and get. You can't count on that every single cycle. You're trying to avoid those situations where it's like, we think that you are going to sign with us, but you are going out and kind of testing your options while we're kind of steadfast committed to you. It's really hard to build an effective class when that stuff is going on. I think that's what Chad Bowden is trying to avoid here.
And again, like, obviously in an ideal world, I think you're right. I think there's a reason very few teams are able to pull it
we'll
off.
see, man.
You still need to get really good players into your class, and really good players are going to be.
And this is what I don't get. I don't get why you keep saying this, because, hey, guess what? USC is getting good players into their class right now. So whatever's going on with those conversations, like, to me, it's working. Now, I'm not disagreeing with you, because I do think it's very, because look, I ain't cut out to be a head coach. There's a reason I'm sitting in my basement doing this, as I like to say. If I was a head coach, or if I was Chad Bowden, I'd ideally want this situation too, where you get a commitment and say, hey, you're committed to us. I wonder why many other programs don't implement this. All right, let me cook for 1 second. We'll get out of here, Dale. Unless you have any other takes, but let's just talk about where USC sits with these off-ball backers. You got one commitment in the fold now with Taylor Johnson. I think let's not act like I would be surprised if the bridge is burned. Like, this was a mutual parting ways. He's not scheduled to visit USC yet for an official visit, but he's been to USC a lot over the last 12 months. So I'd be interested to see if maybe we circle back. But if you don't, look, Talon Ailey ain't even no backup plan. Like, this was a top priority for USC, and it's going to be even more of a priority with Xavier Griffin backing out of the class. USC is the leader in the clubhouse. I would expect them to land this commitment sooner rather than later. Dill, you want another linebacker? I'll throw in there. Like, dude, Kenneth Goodwin from Harbor City, man. This kid freaking rocks. And as a Michigan fan, like, I know Michigan's sniffing around too, and I wouldn't mind him coming up to Ann Arbor. A little bit shorter, flies around the football field. This is the prototypical linebacker that USC wants in their class. Like, a little bit undersized, but premier athlete. This is a damn good backup plan for not. Yeah, I don't even want to call him a backup plan, because I'd be fired up for this kid joining my class. USC's in a good spot at off-ball linebacker. I think the USC fans should be going to bed, resting easy at night. We going to be all right with the off-ball linebackers, at least
again. And that's where, again, I'm not in the USC building. I don't know exactly what's going on. But at the end of the day, if Chad Bowden determines that, like, letting Xavier Griffin go is better for their culture and better for what he's trying to build into this USC program, like, clearly that's the right decision. Because it's not like David Sanders and Michael Fasusi, those were the two examples I kind of used. Those were like different animals. I mean, those were like the headline guys for the class. I don't think either school had their best recruiting cycle when those two are sniffing around other programs. I think they really needed to land them, or else you lose a lot of momentum. This doesn't, to me, kill the USC momentum at all, really. I don't really think about it in that manner. So,
agreed.
Again, I do look, as much as, like, I would it really like, whoa, why can't we have some wiggle room? He's a really good player. We got to make this work kind of mentality. If you think it's going to be disruptive to what you're building, USC clearly has very many more options that are going to work out just fine.
And I'll tell you what, I just like you keep bringing up wiggle room, and I understand where you're coming from. And all I'm saying is like Chad Bowden, he doesn't seem a guy. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that does the wiggle room. Like we're gonna do it this way, and we're gonna be extremely disciplined doing it. But it would have been really easy, Dill, for Chad Bowden to go out and pay $2 million for David Bailey. It would have excited a lot of USC fans. You would have made your football team better in 2025.
And they probably could have done it, to be very honest.
100% they could have done it. But it's the process. It's like I'd rather have 3 Tom-Toms in my 2026 class than 1 David Bailey for 6 months. Yeah, there's a lot of programs where that would take that instant gratification. Chad Bowden ain't one of them. He's going to be the guy that is – I know my process works because I built a national championship caliber football team for Notre Dame. I know I can do it with USC, but we got to follow the process the right way. That's what USC is trying to do. Dill, there are going to be the programs. We saw it. Dill, there's a decommitment, man, and you should see the buzz on Twitter. You know USC's rolling when a decommitment for USC is generating the buzz that it has over the last couple of hours. Other programs are going to take their shots. I think you said it best. I think USC is going to be okay. I don't think this kills the momentum that they've created on the recruiting trail. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.